Hey to YouTube, this is Jeff, aka 11 Bronson, bringing you finally, at long last, my top 10 Charles Bronson films today. This was a tough list to put together. Charles Bronson, probably my favorite tough guy action star actor of his generation. I'm talking about the people in his group. Yes, that even includes Clint Eastwood. It almost isn't a fair match because Eastwood is obviously still alive and still kicking and still making films, while Bronson has been dead for already quite a few years. But of his generation, his films are certainly, I mean, obviously, it is tough, comparing like Clint Eastwood to Bronson. It's not something I like to do. I sort of like to put them together. But secretly, sort of the one I sort of go back to the most, with Death Wish and Mr. Majestic and The Mechanic and all those kinds of films. And he certainly had this one-of-a-kind presence that I don't think even Eastwood has. Eastwood definitely has he's on a different scale because Eastwood is also successful as a director. But Bronson, I love Bronson, and so this, I just want to make the point that this was a difficult list to put together, if that makes any sense. And there's quite a few films that didn't make the top 10. I'm like, it should have been a top 20 because I could have included them all, but I want to really do a top 10. Maybe I can extend it to a top 20 if there would be enough demand for it, but I'm just going to throw out a couple of honorable mentions. And some of the honorable mentions might surprise a lot of you Bronson fans because they did not make the list. Yeah, that's how you know that the actual list is going to be a good one. Anyway. Got a couple of honorable mentions. I'm going to read them off my cheat list that I got just out of frame, hopefully. The Evil That Men Do did not make the list. It's a fantastic 1980s Charles Bronson action film in which Bronson plays a hitman called Holland, who is going to, who's going to this South American country to kill this evil torture guy called the Doctor. And it's funnily enough, this film, one of the only films in the 80s that wasn't a canon film, but trust me, it has that canon film feel to it. But really recommend Evil That Men Do. Did not make the list again, but I wanted it to get a mention at least. So next honorable mention is the film Red Son. Yeah, this, I know a lot of people say, yo, come on, this is a top 10 Bronson film, this one has to make the list. I just couldn't fit it in. I really wanted it to. It's a fantastic Western. It's the East meets West Western. I mean, you just need to look at the cast list to if you want to get convinced, if you want convincement or any sort of persuasion to see this film, just look at the cast list. It says it all. Charles Bronson, Ursula Andress, Alain de Leon, Toshiro Mifune, directed by Terrence Young. It's a fantastic film. Definitely check it out for those that haven't. Next honorable mention, again a Terrence Young film. This is Cold Sweat. One of my, I always really liked this film, Charles Bronson. It's a French sort of Eurocrime mystery thriller film. It has Bronson, Liv Ullmann, James Mason as the bad guy. You also have Jill Ireland there, of course, for good measure. Bronson, he plays this man who's escaped his past. He's living in France, but his past comes back to haunt him in the form of James Mason, who was this old friend, I guess, of him, and that something went wrong in the past and he wants revenge on Bronson. And it's a terrific thriller. Check it out if you're fans of the thriller genre. It's definitely one that I recommend. Same with the next one, honorable mention, Someone Behind the Door. Probably Bronson's, or one of Bronson's best acting roles for sure. He plays this amnesiac who's washed up on the beach. He's found on the beach, he's brought back to the hospital. This doctor, played by Anthony Perkins, he actually takes him under his wing, takes him home with him, trying to jog back his memory, but it turns out that the doctor has an ulterior motive. The wife of the doctor, played by Jill Ireland, is actually cheating on him, and the doctor is going to use Charles Bronson, manipulate him in such a way that he's going to actually because the doctor, he just wants to kill his wife. He's so mad that she's cheating, and he's going to try to sort of manipulate Charles Bronson, the amnesiac, into doing that. So it's a fantastic film. Really check it out if you haven't. It's really it's a real good one, really underrated. And next and last honorable mention is Chados Land. Yeah, I know, this is one of my favorites, man. How could this not make the list? Well, trust me, when we get to my list, you're gonna find out why. Because there's just so many movies to condense them into one top 10 list. It's really hard. But Chados Land, nonetheless, it's one that definitely deserves mention. It's probably the predecessor to First Blood, the film with Sylvester Stallone. It's very similar. Actually, funny enough, the film Chados Land and the novel First Blood by David Morrell, upon which, of course, the film is based, they came out in 1972, both, the same year. I don't know which one came out first. I really have to look into that, because it might be a case of who inspired who. But it's definitely, I thought that was an interesting fact for you. Anyway, yeah, those are the honorable mentions. A couple of more I can throw out, like St. Ives did not make the list, which is one that I really like. Let's see, Breakout did not make the list. Breakheart Pass did not make the list. Farewell Friend did not make the list. Murphy's Law did not make the list. So there's a lot of films, like I said, out there. Like I said, if anybody would like me to extend it to a top 20 in the future, like I'm just gonna do an additional 10 films upon this one, just let me know if there's interest for that. I can do that. Anyway, let's move on to the official top 10, starting with number 10. Here we go.
I warned you! I tell her!
At number 10, we have 1970s Violent City, directed by Sergio Slima, starring Charles Bronson, Telly Savalas, and Jill Ireland. This is a Eurocrime, Italian crime film. It's fantastic. It has great music score by Ennio Morricone. Charles Bronson plays his hitman called Jeff, who is betrayed by his girlfriend Vanessa, played by Jill Ireland. And pretty much he spends some time in hospital, prison hospital, and then in prison. He gets released and he gets tangled up in this web of sort of blackmail and whatever, having to do with the mobster played by Telly Savalas, who's now Telly Savalas' character. He actually now has Vanessa, you know, Jeff's girlfriend. He actually has her as his personal play toy, if you will, which of course Bronson is not too happy about. So that it's ultimately is going to go to a confrontation between Bronson and Telly Savalas. And there's also still that deceitful Vanessa, played by Jill Ireland, and it's a fantastic film. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to spoil too much for those that haven't seen it, but it's a really good one. Definitely check it out. It is a top 10 Bronson film for sure. This one just had to make the list. Anyway, let's move on to number 9.
Who the fuck are you? Death.
At number 9, we have the excellent Peter Hunt directed Death Hunt from 1981, starring Charles Bronson, Lee Marvin. Let's see who else is in this. Angie Dickinson, Carl Weathers, Apollo Creed himself, the Master of Disaster. Andrew Stevens, who would later also star with Bronson in the film 10 to Midnight. He's also in this film. Terrific film, very similar to Chados Land and First Blood, in that it's one of those films where Bronson plays a trapper called Albert Johnson. It's actually inspired by true events from what I've heard. I believe the film says that in the beginning, it has like a little card, like the film is inspired by true events. But he plays this trapper called Albert Johnson, who actually saves this fighting dog in the beginning of the film. Ed Lauder, he's also in this film. Ed Lauder is like one of the guys that is doing the fighting of, you know, the fighting dogs, dog fights. He actually saves the dog that Ed Lauder bought, and he's not too happy about it. He said, "You're gonna have to pay for the dog," and he does pay. Bronson, he does pay. He does the honorable thing. But Ed Lauder is still not satisfied. He's like, hey, I want more for that dog, you piece of shit. Anyway, it leads to a little confrontation. Ed Lauder is pissed. He wants a posse out on him. Things go wrong, people get killed, and there's a full posse now set after Charles Bronson, led by Lee Marvin, and set in the snow. I believe it takes place in like the Yukon or like the Rocky Mountains, whatever, but it's a snowy environment. It's a very cool setting. Directed by Peter Hunt. We know him from his work on the Bond pictures. He was an editor, and of course he directed my favorite James Bond film, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Terrific director, and this film is a fantastic one. Definitely check this one out if you haven't. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything else plot-wise. It's a great premise. It's a man in the nature against other men sent after him. For if you like Rambo, if you like First Blood, if you like Chados Land, you're gonna love this film. There's no doubt about it. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. At number 8, we have another European film by Charles Bronson during his European period from 1970. This is Rider on the Rain. Man, this is an excellent film. Great thriller. Stars Charles Bronson, Melanie Joubert, I think her name is. Could be wrong, hope I pronounce it right. But then you have also Jill Ireland's in the cast as well. Terrific thriller in which a criminal arrives in this town. He does an assault on this young woman, Melly, I think the character's name is, played by Melanie Joubert. I hope I pronounced it right. I hope that's the name. I should have wrote it down, but fun fact, she's actually Eva Green's mother. I did find that out. She's actually the mother of actress Eva Green, known for Casino Royale, West Berlin. Anyway, I thought that was a fun fact. And with this killer, he sort of assaults and rapes this woman, but he does this strange thing where he stays in the house after he assaults a woman. So actually the girl takes this shotgun and of course shoots the bastard, and then disposes of the body. And then Charles Bronson arrives in the town. He's actually this army colonel who's actually on the case of finding that killer. He's actually on the case of finding the killer. He finds out very quickly that this girl has something to do with the disappearance of him, and there's a little cat and mouse game. It's a fantastic film. Again, I'm going to leave it at that. That's just the basic setup for the story. Fantastic film. One of Charles Bronson's most playful and best performances. He just, I don't know, I can't explain it, but he does such a great job in this film. Anyway, that's Rider on the Rain.
You believe in Jesus? Yes, I do. Well, you're going to meet him.
Number 7, we have 1972's The Mechanic, the second film that Charles Bronson did with director Michael Winner. They previously collaborated on Chados Land. And of course they would go on to do Death Wish and also film The Stone Killer. Yeah, The Mechanic, Charles Bronson plays Arthur Bishop, who's this aging hitman who's sort of, being a bit lonely. He's like, he's feeling the pressure of doing everything alone, so to sort of make things easier, he reluctantly, I might add, but he does take on this protege, played by Jan Michael Vincent, who he teaches him the ropes and stuff, and like all great films and thrillers, this one sort of ends in deceit and double cross, and I'm gonna leave it at that once again. It's a fantastic film. They carry out a lot of hits. Surprisingly not too violent actually. It's not much bloodshed or anything shown, but it's still a great action film for sure. One of Charles Bronson's best, absolutely. So that's The Mechanic from 1972. Definitely check it out if you haven't. It's a high recommendation. And let's move on to the next one.
We're still in the fucking car. What's it to you?
It's my car. How you gonna die?
coming in at number 6, we have the 1983 sleazy cop thriller 10 to Midnight. I love 10 to Midnight. This one just had to make the list somewhere. Turns out it's a bit higher than I thought it was gonna be. But I just love this film so much. Charles Bronson plays Detective Leo Kessler, who's on the case of the serial killer who does his killings in the nude, played by Gene Davis. He got his partner, played by Andrew Stevens, who previously was in Death Hunt with Charles Bronson. And also you have his daughter in this film, played by Lisa Eilbacher. Hope I pronounced her name right. She was in Beverly Hills Cop, is where I remember her from the most. Besides this film, she played Jenny in Beverly Hills Cop, Eddie Murphy's, Axel Foley's friend in Beverly Hills. Terrific actress. I liked her a lot in this film as well. Just everything about this film, it's 1983. It's definitely an 80s film. You can feel it. It's right there. The music is so 80s. The hair, the clothes. This is just a film that is drenched into the 80s. It soaks the 80s up. And I love it. The 80s is probably my favorite decade for films, for action films in particular. And this film is right up there among the best for me personally. Bronson is such a badass in this film, going after the killer. Great film. There's really nothing I can add. It was directed by J. Lee Thompson, who of course worked with Charles Bronson about 9 times. Great film. Definitely, I'd say to everybody, check this out if you haven't. Just like every film on this list, I don't even need to say it at this point, but do recommend it a lot. It's a terrific film, and the ending is definitely one that will surprise a lot of people. I knew it surprised me when I first saw it. I mean, not the action that Bronson takes, but the consequence that happens. And that's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna leave it at that. Anyway, that's 10 to Midnight. Let's move on.